I'm Katy Hessel and I'm at Charleston, Lewes today to have a look at Bring No Clothes, Bloomsbury and Fashion, an exhibition that explores the Bloomsbury Group's relationship to fashion, and it's the first ever exhibition to do so. This exhibition is full to the brim of clothes by modern day designers who have been influenced by the Bloomsbury Group, a group of artists who are working at the beginning of the 20th century here near Lewes in East Sussex. So let's take a closer look at the Bloomsbury Group and how they shaped modern fashion. Much of the Bloomsbury Group, including Vanessa Bell and Duncan Grant, really came of age in the Victorian era here in Britain, when we witnessed these seismic shifts, not only about society, but also how people dressed and presented themselves. And in these fantastic letters from Virginia Woolf to the likes of T.S. Eliot, she would say, "Come down to Sussex and bring no clothes." And what she meant by this was not literally bring no clothes, but in the sense that shed all those restrictive conventions that the Victorian Britain imposed on you. Each section begins with a portrait of a member of the Bloomsbury Group, and we see the way that they wanted to present themselves, the fact that you can express oneself through paint, but also the absence of clothes as well. Vanessa Bell was just as much of a painter as she was a maker, and in this exhibition we meet her here as a subject for her then lover Duncan Grant, in this painting that evokes her love of fabric and this idea that sewing was also an everyday activity. Vanessa Bell was known to make all sorts of garments, but I love this idea that she never wanted to use buttons to hold anything together. She wanted to use safety pins, and actually that reveals something about her personality. It was less so about the precision and more about the final outcome. And in this painting, hidden within it, are actually fragments of fabric from her dress, to this idea that a painting can also be a collage of so many different materials, perhaps to evoke the many personalities and traits she had as a maker and a painter. This work was made in 1915 by her then lover Duncan Grant, the year before they came to Charleston. And I love the fact that it almost signifies the blossoming of the relationship, this union between two people who inspired a whole generation of artists and thinkers, of fashion designers. It's as though this relationship within this one painting signifies the start of something. This exhibition is just as much about clothes as it is painting, and I love the fact that we can meet clothes in paintings that not only show their personality, but also show what they wore and their love of fabric. In this portrait of Vanessa Bell by Duncan Grant, we see her love of slightly garish but dazzling colours, this yellow that really pops out. And actually Virginia Woolf was known to talk about Vanessa Bell's work by saying that Vanessa Bell's clothes wrenched the eyes out of her sockets, that they were so bright. And that's what we really see in this work. It is dazzling, but it's also jewel-like. Portraiture is not just about faces. It's about how one presents themselves, but it's also clues into what life was like for that subject at that time. And through dress, we can see what life, especially here, was like for gay men in the early 20th century. These works are preparatory studies by Duncan Grant for a larger mural at Lincoln Cathedral in 1957 of St. Blaise and of Christ as a Good Shepherd. Although the model is unknown in this work, we see this intimate relationship between Grant and his sitter. And interestingly, in the final outcome, he was not presented just like this, but actually as a dock worker, carrying a sack of wool. And on the right-hand panel, we meet Paul Rauch, who was a long-time muse and sitter of Duncan Grant. They met in 1946, and this is made in 1957. So not only is Duncan Grant documenting a body here, but he's also documenting and chronicling this long-time relationship that they had together. And when the final versions of these panels came into fruition in 1959, they weren't met with a positive reaction. Firstly, people were not happy about the amount of flesh that was on view, but they also commented on the homoerotic undertones. And for years, they were put behind cupboards and were effectively censored. As well as being Duncan Grant's muse, Paul Rauch was also an ordained Catholic priest and novelist and poet. And when he was in London, he was known to wear sailor outfits, which he also wore when posing for Duncan Grant. And when we look at this work through a queer lens, the sailor outfit actually means a little bit more. Sailors were known for their free spirit and adventure, this idea of the transient world outside of convention. And I love the fact that within this painting of this ordained priest, we can read a little bit more into it. This is E.M. Forster, the novelist of Howard's End and A Room with a View, and here we meet him wearing a suit. Now, in this exhibition, we really address the complexities of the suit, because in the early 20th century, the suit was a symbol of patriarchy and power. Ian Forster grew up in a very upper-class upbringing, and his schooling required him to wear a suit from a very early age, as if preparing him to become a certain person society wanted him to abide by. Ian Forster was gay, and so here the suit actually represents something else. The suit is a tool for oppression. It's something that stifled him from becoming the person he wanted to actually be. But for the economist John Maynard Keynes, the suit meant something else. The suit for him was a symbol of power. And even in this portrait by Duncan Grant of him in the luscious garden, all relaxed, he's still wearing the suit, as if to evoke his power. And here we see the scene represented again in the same year by Roger Fry. Here are both of their portraits reunited, and it's said that Keynes was drafting a telegram for the government to ensure the economic survival of the UK. And these later portraits by Vanessa Bell, painted in the 1950s, really show a shift in the way that Bloomsbury dressed, but also the conventions in painting. If we look at the clothes closely in these works, they are a far cry from the fabrics that we met in the 1910s, perhaps signalling this new post-war era in society and in the way that people dressed. From red fluffy turtlenecks to black shift dresses, these paintings really show this shift in the purity of design. Here we've learned that through clothing, we can have such a deeper understanding of who the Bloomsbury Group were, how they wanted to present themselves, and how they lived their life. But also how fashion provided a language to break away from the conventions of the time. Bring No Clothes, Bloomsbury and Fashion, curated by the brilliant Charlie Porter, has been extended until the 3rd of March 2024 here at Charleston, Lewes.